Hi everyone, it's Anna here from Journeys. Today's question for AAA, Ask Anna Anything. The question is about grief, and so I'm going to read it and then share my thoughts with you. The question says, what can an individual do when they want to and need to speak about the people that have passed, but siblings and other family members around them don't show or share or want to discuss the profound impact of the grief? This person says that they've lost 5 men in 4 years. Firstly, I want to say I'm really sorry for your loss. It's huge. It's a lot, and there's no easy way to process through grief in any form. And so the loss of a lot of people in a short period of time is really hard to work through and to make sense of. There's a lot of questions that come around grief and the grieving process. Secondly, I wanted to just say that there isn't any right or wrong way in dealing with grief. And as I said, it's hard to deal with grief. It's messy. A lot of the time it doesn't make sense and you're looking for answers or just trying to make sense of each day, and it's hard. It really, really is hard. I think also everyone deals with grief differently. And so in your situation where you're wanting to talk about the people who have passed away, but your siblings, people around you, particularly family, kind of don't want to talk about it. They don't want to talk about the situation or the people or whatever it is in your situation. And I guess too, that's really hard, because one of the things around grief is that we want to share our grief often. We want to share it with common people who knew lots of different people who knew the same person. And so often we do drive towards people who knew that person. We can share stories, maybe share common stories, or share, how did you know that person, and different experiences that you had, or different things you learned from that person, or stories, all those sorts of things. So it's a natural instinct to want to talk about that when you feel ready. But as I said, every person deals with grief differently. And that is one of, I think, the hardest things about grief, when we've lost someone and we have people around us who have also lost that person. But sometimes people don't want to talk about it. They don't want to talk about the situation or the person or whatever. And that is really hard, because often that's a connection point for us. So one thing I would say to you is, depending on your relationship with your siblings and your family members, try and talk with them, not necessarily about the grief or about the person who's passed away, but about the fact that you want to connect with them about that, that you feel maybe disconnected, or however it is that you feel. So one side, if you feel safe enough to do that, is to have those hard conversations. But further to that, my encouragement would be, see if you can find other people to talk about those people you've lost with. So it might be friends or other communities, if you in your social groups, or if you're part of a church community, or some kind of a club or something like that, where you feel like you can talk about your grief and how you're going in that. I know for me, my friends are really important parts of the process, when sometimes, I might want to talk about it, but not burden or not talk to my family about it. Because sometimes we're talking about it all the time, or different moods that people might be in where sometimes we don't want to talk about it. So I would encourage you to think about, who else could I share this part of my journey with? A friend or someone from another community in your life. Alternatively to that, sometimes therapy can be a really helpful place for you to be able to talk about your grief and talk about the people who have passed away. Even though it might feel a little bit clinical to do that, there can be so much freedom and so much healing that comes from talking to a counsellor or a therapist about your grief. Because grieving, as I said, is different for everyone. And so sometimes we need to give ourselves that permission to find the space that we need to be able to talk about it, so that you can go on your journey, because you're only responsible for yourself. You can't force anyone into going on their own grief journey at the same rate as you. So Thank you for asking your question and for being brave in reaching out. This grief topic is really quite hard, and yet it's something that all of us experience at some point in our life. So I think it's important to talk about. I hope that's been helpful.